I'm Chris Beers, in for Steve Lance. President Trump signed an executive order today to ban all federal funding of risky gain-of-function research in countries like China. The administration warns that China is engaged in a bioweapons arms race that could likely endanger Americans. Iris Tao reports from the White House.
And President Trump on Monday signed a new executive order banning all federal funding of risky gain-of-function research in countries like China, where the administration says lacks proper oversight of such dangerous experiments. It comes after U.S. intelligence agencies said that the COVID-19 pandemic most likely came from a lab leak in Wuhan, China. And President Trump, reiterating he's a believer of the lab leak theory, says such a ban could have likely prevented the COVID outbreak.
Many people believe that gain-of-function research was one of the key causes of the COVID pandemic that struck us in the last decade.
It's a big deal. It could have been that we wouldn't have had the problem we had.
Gain-of-function research is a type of biomedical research where pathogens are enhanced to make them more potent or change the way that they function. The administration says the new funding ban is to protect Americans from lab accidents, such as those that likely caused COVID-19, which cost the world 20 million lives and at least $25 trillion. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the health secretary, says a lot of gain-of-function research was moved offshore to the Wuhan lab in China, and China has been engaging in a bio-arms race that could endanger American lives.
We have an launched bioweapons arms race all around the country, all around the world, so that China is engaged in it, developing all kinds of weapons using AI and CRISPR technologies that are really devastating.
Meanwhile, on China, President Trump today said that China is being decimated by his high tariffs, adding that China wants a deal badly.
China wants to make a deal very badly. You see what's happening to China. China is being decimated, and I don't want that to happen. But they have to make a fair deal.
The administration says it's meeting with many countries, including China, and that the first trade deal could come soon with one of the 10 top economies. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
President Trump is calling for 100% tariffs on foreign-made films to help the American film industry. And the Department of Homeland Security is offering airline tickets and $1,000 to illegal immigrants to help them return to their home countries. Joining me now to discuss these latest developments is Matt Klink, Republican strategist and owner and president of Klink Campaigns, and Josh Lafazan, former Democratic Nassau County legislator. Josh Lafazan and Matt Klink, thank you both so much for joining us. The White House says it's exploring all options to deliver on President Trump's call for a 100% tariff on foreign-made films. Trump says, quote, the movie industry in America is dying a very fast death. Matt, is Hollywood dying, and would this tariff help?
Well, I don't know about the tariff helping. I think the fact that Hollywood may not be doing well has less to do with foreign films and more to do about the quality of the product that they're putting on screen. That being said, one or two mega hits a year is not a lot to sustain an industry. But I do know that there is a problem with domestic production. Each state wants radical subsidies to keep production in that state. In fact, my own state of California is trying to pass a new subsidy package to keep production in Hollywood. It's the first that I'm hearing of it. I heard about it this morning when I woke up, just as everybody else did. So it remains to be seen. You haven't heard yet Sony or Warner Brothers or Paramount come out and say that they're for it or against it.
And Josh, Trump says other nations are in a concerted effort to lure filmmakers out of the country. What impact do you think that would have on the national identity and culture, assuming that he's right?
Sure. I mean, if you read about the history of Hollywood, right, this country has been at the forefront of movie production, of ideological ingenuity, right? Walt Disney and all of these amazing figures in Hollywood. So it will make a impact on our national identity. And right now, I agree with Matt that, quite frankly, it is the state's competition and the high tax rate that is moving films out of the country and into foreign nations. But I'll say 100% tariff, I don't think will make a difference in bringing quality production home. I think we'll make sure to bring foreign films abroad. And as the time moviegoers can't afford to go to the movies, a tariff will only be a tax increase that's passed on to the price of the ticket and make sure Americans can't go to the movies on a Friday or Saturday night.
The Department of Homeland Security is offering $1,000 and airline tickets to illegal immigrants who self-deport. Matt, in your estimation, will this be an appealing deal to these illegal immigrants?
Well, look, I think there are two reasons for it. One, it's purely economical. It costs, I saw an estimate today, it costs roughly $14,500 to go round up and return someone home. And it will cost roughly $4,000 to have someone self-deport, give them a $1,000 check and put them on an airplane. So it's a matter of economics for one, but two, if the person who entered this country illegally ever hopes to come back, if they do self-deport, they can come back. If they get caught and deported, it's a minimum of 20 years before they'll be allowed to come back into this country. So it's a common sense measure too. And I think that if the Trump administration is smart and on it, they're going to start advertising this. It is rather ironic that the Biden administration had all these midnight flights to secret locations where they were dropping immigrants off. And now the Trump administration is going to advertise how to take them back home. So it just goes to show Donald Trump's focus on the border, which has been an unmitigated success for him in his first 104 days in office.
Josh, during the election cycle, while everyone was running, we heard polling that a majority of Americans, 54% or something, were in support of mass deportations. How are you looking at this deportation, self-deportation incentives?
Sure, I don't think I have a problem with it. Offering immigrants the ability to self-deport is a more humane way of removal. And I agree with Matt. If President Trump ran on the topic of immigration, ran on the topic of border security, ran on the topic of Joe Biden not being adequate in keeping the border closed. And as a Democrat, I have to admit that Joe Biden didn't have a piece of legislation to close the border. Donald Trump did it without a piece of legislation. And as his poll numbers continue to crater on the economy and other issues, they keep holding steady on immigration border. And so I think Democrats would be wise not to take the bait here. The majority of Americans want those who are illegal here, especially those who commit crimes, to be deported. And I think as long as we can lead with humanity, that's a best policy. What I don't want to see is something like Abrego Garcia, where we have folks who are deported accidentally and are not being able to be brought back. So using humanity and using due process are not mutually exclusive.
Matt, Josh just mentioned Abrego Garcia and the controversies surrounding his deportation and the lawsuits that are flying surrounding that as well. How is that playing out for Trump politically? I mean, we hear Trump critics saying this is indicative of a constitutional crisis.
Yeah, that's what they want you to believe. But look, Trump and immigration are popular. Trump believes that he has a solid political footing, and he may have a solid legal footing. About the irony that Joe Biden could let 10+ million people into this country illegally with no concern for the due process of American citizens. And yet now the NAACP, the ACLU, the PTA, and the Democrats, I'm being a little facetious there, obviously, are now saying that every single one of these people needs to have their own hearing for their due process rights. And I just think that is hogwash and ridiculous. That didn't happen when Bill Clinton and Barack Obama deported people. Barack Obama was called the deporter in chief when he was president. But when the Orange Man's president, suddenly all of these civil rights groups and other groups, they find their footing and say, oh, it's a new standard. So, look, the people, if you're here in this country illegally, go home.
Republican Representative Elise Stefanik says she's strongly considering running for New York governor. Josh, would she have a chance against current Democratic Governor Kathy Hochul?
Sure, I'm a New York Democrat, so I would love to say no. But as a realist who lives in this state, I'm going to say yes. Governor Hochul has major vulnerabilities in the suburbs, especially on Long Island where I live. New Yorkers are fleeing to other states at higher rates than any other state in the country. Democrats in New York State with supermajority rule We've seen rises in taxes, rises in crime, lowering of job rates and quality of life, and rising of cost of living. So Elise Stefanik, who has unbelievably high name recognition for somebody who's not a state official, I think has a real chance of winning. The other thing I'll say is that New York has a major Jewish population, and Elise Stefanik was hailed as a hero after the hearings about college presidents, which 2 out of 3 were fired. I think 3 out of 3 when all said was done. So can Kathy Hochul win again? Yes. Can Elise Stefanik win again? Yes. Will it be the closest gubernatorial race in the country in a solid blue state? I think so.
Matt, the other part of this in the last 30 seconds here, if Stefanik runs, do Republicans actually have enough wiggle room in the House to secure their congressional agenda?
Well, look, I mean, she's not going to run until 26. The seat is up. It's very clear that Elise Stefanik wants something bigger than the House seat that she's had for 6 terms. And I think that, when most people get their name withdrawn for a higher office, in this case for the UN ambassador, it's because of something that they did wrong. That was not the case for Elise Stefanik. She left in part because Kathy Hochul said she wouldn't fill that seat, that she would leave it vacant, which would cause some math problems for the Republicans. I think that the Republicans are confident that they will hold that seat in 2026 no matter what, well, assuming they have a credible candidate. And I think that Josh is right. But Kathy Hochul is a vulnerable Democrat, but Elise Stefanik needs some things to drop into place. She needs a stronger economy. She needs more job numbers like the jobs report that came out today. She needs the stock market to keep on going up. And she needs some of these trade agreements to get signed so that she can come in and say that the Republican policies are working, and she doesn't have to defend Trump while running for governor in New York, that's a tough thing to do because Donald Trump lost New York by 20 points in 2024.
All right, we will see what happens. It's going to be an interesting few years here. Josh Lafazan and Matt Klink, thank you both so much for covering these interesting topics with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
The House passes several China-related bills today, including the Falun Gong Protection Act by unanimous voice vote. It aims to sanction foreign nationals who directly or indirectly participate in the involuntary harvesting of organs in China. NTD's Arlene Richards has the highlights.
I ask you to join me in taking a stand against the Chinese Communist Party's systematic persecution of Falun Gong practitioners.
After a floor debate, the House on Monday passes the Falun Gong Protection Act by a voice vote. The act imposes sanctions on foreigners involved in forced organ harvesting of religious prisoners in China. Sponsor of the bill, Representative Scott Perry, said he introduced the bill to confront the most egregious, barbaric, medieval human rights atrocities of our current time.
Since the early 1990s, the Falun Gong, a spiritual practice rooted in the principles of truth, compassion, and tolerance, has been targeted by the Chinese Communist Party. By 1999, Mr. Speaker, an estimated 70 to 100 million people, roughly 5 to 7% of China's population, were practicing Falun Gong. This popularity triggered a brutal response from the CCP, unleashing a campaign of illegal detentions, forced labor, torture, and most horrifically, forced organ harvesting, a practice that amounts to mass murder.
Florida Representative Brian Mass said the House has been raising alarms about organ harvesting for decades. He explained the Chinese Communist Party's methods.
These detainees, often imprisoned for their beliefs, are subjected to medical procedures that other prisoners are not. Blood draws, organ examinations, ultrasound scans. These are not for their health. These are the results, are then entered into a database, turning them into a human inventory for a state-run organ harvesting system.
In an interview with the Epoch Times after the vote, Perry explained why the vote was important.
But it's been too easy for all countries, including the United States, to just turn a blind eye to what we're pretty confident is happening, which is horrific. this ends that.
The House vote is just the first step in the act's journey to becoming a law. It next goes to the Senate for a vote and then to the president's desk. Perry had a message for the Senate.
For any senator that says no, we want to know why you approve of forced organ harvesting. Like we want to know that answer. If you're worried about China, the relations of America with the Communist Party of China, are you then telling everybody in the world you're okay with them killing people and taking their organs out just because they can?
Arlene Richards, NTD News.
What do Americans say about China's practice of forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall in D.C. to hear from the people.
The House of Representatives is voting on a bill that specifically sanctions anyone involved in China's forced organ harvesting abuses. So basically, what China has been doing over the years is to target prisoners of conscience. They have been collecting their biometric data and put them into hospitals and cut them open while they're still alive and harvest their organ out. That is to supply China's organ transplant industry. So what's your reaction upon hearing that?
That's horrible. If there's anything that we could do, that NATO, United States could do, we should try to do that.
Go get them. Yeah, if they're doing that, that's horrible. And that's the problem. If you live in China, that's what you're under.
I think targeting that and putting sanctions on it is a fantastic idea. I think human rights violations, regardless of who's doing it, is just simply unacceptable, especially in today's society.
It is appalling. I'm not super surprised because I think that a lot of times we forget in the United States just how different the West really is from the rest of the world. It's unfortunate for sure, and I'm glad to hear we're doing something about it.
Well, I hope that it gives hope that our United States government is taking a look at that and is bringing that to the forefront to be voted on and to bring that to the United States people so that we become aware.
What's your message to people in China, specifically Falun Gong practitioners in this case, who are being targeted for their organs, who are still suffering persecution till this day?
I don't know what we could do over there. I'm feeling for them. Hopefully, if they can put some stipulations in the tariffs to stop that would be great.
All I got to say is to keep fighting. Authoritarian regimes, no matter what they tell you, will never hold on to power. It may be tough, it may be terrible for many years, and it's impossible to say how long it will last, but never stop fighting.
So I would say to the people of China to hang in there. We're there for them too. We understand that they're under the CCP, and hopefully one day they can find freedom.
I would tell them to speak out and use whatever means they have necessary to share their story and to get it out to others and make folks like us aware of it. We're limited power by ourselves, but together we can do a great deal. And so I think letting the rest of the world know what's going on is very important.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.